Hello, fans of literature. Walter Bowne here. Talking about the Crucible once again. You've read the play, or you've seen the movie, and I'm here now to change hats a little bit. Not so much to talk about the literature, but to talk about the film in the 1950s that echoed, mirrored the paranoia, the hysteria that came with McCarthyism, the Red Scare, the second Red Scare. I might touch on the Hollywood 10 and blacklisting, but really it's about the films that were popular in the 1950s that were allegories to our fear of communism and alien invasion. Our way of life was going to be supplanted by soulless, godless communism. And that fear was not misplaced, right? Oftentimes, was the witches thing misplaced in Salem? Probably. But did they really believe that the devil was loose in Salem? Yeah, they really did believe that. And the holy books told them that. Reverend Hale told them that. Witchcraft, if you look at the history of witchcraft, it's scary stuff. But communism, it was the idea that it was a cancer. It was spreading. We were fighting in Korea, North Korea. We were going to be fighting in the 60s in Vietnam. We still have an embargo. We still have with Cuba, right? So the idea that international communism was going to spread, and that if you didn't protect yourself, and if you didn't find out where the spies were, you're going to be infiltrated. You're going to be taken over as if you had no power, right? Having watched the Harry Potter series now, like we're finishing the last movie, the fear of Death Eaters was real, right? The fear of Voldemort was going to come and take over, right? That was a real fear. So you had to do everything you could to counterbalance and protect yourself and defend against the dark arts, right? So what Hollywood did was, of course, they wanted people like Stephen King up there in Maine, a little kid at the time in elementary school. He loved these horror films, right? He'll go to these double features and see things like It Came From Outer Space and Invasion of the Body Snatchers and The Thing and It. And after this little intro here, I'll show you some clips of these films, and hopefully they are campy. If you look back on it now, the special effects were not what we have today, but the storytelling was still pretty good. And some of the acting in it was campy, yeah, but, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that's a great film, right? At first I thought it was going to be like, this is going to be kind of dumb. And it is, kind of, but it's actually not that dumb. It's actually pretty good. So, let's think, too, of, why we are so obsessed today with zombies, right? The Walking Dead, Zombieland, Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. All these zombie flicks, right? That didn't come out of nowhere. And we have these films today. It's not about international communism. It could be about other things that we might not be aware of. Maybe historians and English teachers and film historians will be looking back on this period, 2020, as seeing, COVID. Who knows? The fear of the other, right? The fear of immigrants, right? That's always been a big thing. So let's take a back. Let's get some popcorn out. It's not going to be too long, but let's take a look at the allegories here of the 1950s and apply it to understand where this was coming from. McCarthyism just did not appear out of the ether and he just appeared, right? There had to be groundwork there, right? Voldemort just didn't appear, right? Darth Vader just didn't appear. Hitler did not just appear. There is anti-Semitism all around the world, in Germany, in the US, and they see it, they use it for their own power, right? And that's another lecture with McCarthyism. But let's stick to Hollywood. Let's stick to the pictures today. And hopefully I'll come back down to my basement. That's where I am right now. It's maybe a little dark. I'm gathering the lumos, gathering the light with little Ron Weasley's little thing that he got from Voldemort. No, that he got from a Dumbledore. My bad, Potter fans. And try to put as much light down here as possible. Hope everyone's well and safe. And I'll go back upstairs and let's take a look at some films. So you had film strips like this.
In recognizing a communist, physical appearance counts for nothing. If he openly declares himself to be a communist, we take his word for it.
This is how to spell a communist.
If a person
you read certain
consistently reads and
newspapers,
advocates the views expressed in a
say
communist
he doesn't look
publication,
like a communist,
he may be a communist.
but if he's doing these things, he might be a
If
communist.
a person supports organizations which reflect communist teachings, or organizations
Look, they
labeled
all look
communist by
like
the
regular
Department of
people,
Justice,
right? But they might
she
be
may be a
communists.
communist. If a person defends the activities of communist nations while consistently attacking the domestic and foreign policy of the United States,
She's
she
a
may
communist.
be a communist.
Now, she might look like a communist.
If a person does all these things over a period of time, he must be a communist.
All right, so to keep on the Monty Python satirical thing, was how can you spot a communist? Well, how can you spot a witch? And let's listen. This is from Holy Grail.
We have found the witch. May we burn her? Who do you know she is a witch? She looks like one.
All right, so this scene is so full of comedy, but also so full of insight into human nature. They're just have this bloodlust to want to kill somebody. Think of the bloodlust that's in the Crucible. Think of, kids, want to see a fight in the hallway and everyone rushes to see it and the video record it. Like, why do we do that? It's crazy stuff, right? So they took this innocent girl in this movie here, right? They dressed her up like a witch, put a false nose on her. They said, how can you tell she's a witch? Well, she looks like one, right? And he's trying to use logic, Sir Bedivere, and he's not logical. He uses illogic. And the crowd just wants this person killed, right? So, again, satire illustrating very real concerns and using satire as a weapon to illustrate just how fanatical human beings can be and how disrooted from judgment and logic and reason we can be when there's fear in operation. Just one more, a little bit.
Bring her forward.
I'm not a witch. I'm not a witch.
But you are dressed as one.
They dressed me up like this. And this isn't my nose. It's a false one.
Well, we did do the nose. The nose?
And the hat.
And the hat. But she's a witch.
All right, if you want to see that more, just go to the whole scene. It's really funny. In fact, you should see all of Monty Python's Holy Grail. It's so funny. All right, everyone, let's take a look at this anti-communist film that was made. I have got to check out the date on it. But this is probably from the early 1950s. Okay.
For today's topic, let's join now a group of young people at the National Education Program Workshop in Arkansas. At the classroom lectern is Dr. Clifton L. Gaines, Jr., noted young historian.
Some of you may be asking yourselves, why should we be bothered with developing citizenship responsibilities? Well, there are many reasons. One of the primary reasons is that great principles do not live from generation to generation without being nurtured, without being kept vigorously alive. Unless we understand and work effectively for the principles upon which our American way of life is founded, the structure will crumble and our heritage of freedom will perish. Another primary reason for the development of citizenship responsibility is that we are living in an era marked by the growth of socialism. To a substantial degree, in one form or another, socialism has spread the shadow of human regimentation over most of the nations of the earth, and the shadow is encroaching upon our own liberty. A third major reason for accepting our citizenship responsibilities and working at them is the presence within America of socialist and communist propagandists dedicated to the establishment of a new order. The communist fifth columnists among us are working for world dictatorship. To accomplish this, their strategy is to undermine the confidence of our people in the American system.
Okay, so if you're watching this, like before a movie, and it pops up, and it's like there's these fifth columnists, there's spies among us, there's those that want to infiltrate America and change capitalism to socialism and bring Leninism to America, you know, you're being suspicious, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is really happening as this dark shadow is coming over all of us. So there's the element of truth, but it's used as a weapon then it can be used as a weapon to point your finger at anybody. So with like the Salem witch trials, there's the sphere of witches, and there's no one really a witch, but you could use the fear of Satan, of demon possession, and point the finger at anyone, and whoever you point your finger at is accused. And like McCarthy can just, as we'll see, can just name people, name 206 names or whatever, and if you were called before HUAC, you know, you were presumed guilty before there was even a trial, right? So it was this fear that was used to control people, whether it's Salem, Massachusetts, or it's 1950s America, or the fear, you know, the fears that we have today that can be used, even though it's all legitimate. You know, there's the element of truth there, but how is it used as a weapon for people to keep power and come to power? Growing up, I remember this in the 70s, John Cleese, and what he thinks about international communism of Monty Python.
Smash the dirty red scum! Kick him in the teeth where it hurts! Kill!
Mass hysteria.
Bastard Tommies! I hate him!
Cheese ready?
Kind of.
Okay, so Monty Python would also satirize the spread of communism in sketches like this.
And so Miss Spume returned to her typing and dreamed her little dreamy dreams, unaware of the cruel trick fate had in store for her. For Miss Spume was about to fall victim of the dreaded international Chinese Communist conspiracy. Yes, these fanatical fiends, under the leadership of the so-called Mao Zedong, had caught Miss Spume off guard for one brief but...
So it was the idea, this is in the late 60s, satirizing the idea that, you know, this typist, this secretary, administrative assistant is going to be overwhelmed in a sea of communists. And then we have things like this, where they're satirizing the leaders of communism in a quiz show.
And the first question is for you, Karl Marx. The Hammers. The Hammers is the nickname of what English football team? The Hammers.
Right. What's funny about that is, of course, the hammer and the sickle, of course, representing a Soviet Union workers and the field workers and agriculture. But, you know, of course, this is funny. It's satirizing communism. So this is way after the 1950s. But you know, we're still in the Cold War in this period. And this is seeing international communism through a comedic lens. Let's look at it now without comedy, without satire, and the way Hollywood was looking at it in the 1950s with these different types of horror movies. All right, guys, I'm just an English teacher here, very interested in this stuff. And if you're interested, here's a video you can see about American films in the 1950s. John Hall from Boston University giving a lecture about the 1950s movies and the Red Scare. It's like an hour and 22 minutes.
Of the era that we're looking at, to take you back in time. I've got two things that I think will set up my lecture today quite nicely.
So this is not just me talking. There's lots of research here that shows this was going on. Let's take a look at 4 movies. All right, It Came from Outer Space, The Thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and World of Worlds. They're all from like 1951, 1952, 1953, 1954, and of course this is all during the time of McCarthyism and the Red Scare. So let's take a look here. And notice when it says it's coming, it is the alien, but it's also communism. Let's just take a look at this trailer. Special effects, again, very bad.
Yes, it came from outer space to fill the world with terror, to
Communism.
bring you unforgettable suspense.
I saw
What was
communism.
it? Where did it come from?
Russia.
Who were the all-powerful creatures it brought from outer space? What
Soviets.
did they want on Earth?
World domination.
You can learn the amazing answer only when you see the most thrilling picture in years. It came from outer space. In the astonishing realism of 3 dimensions, with objects coming right out of the screen, so real they almost touch.
All right, let's take a look at The Thing. Again, The Thing from Another World. You're seeing a similar pattern here, right? This is 1951.
I shot it, I hit it, I know it. It kept coming at me, making a noise like a cat doing. Captain, it was awful. Those hands and those eyes. You've got to do something about it. You've got.
Watching these movies, people would feel, solidarity in fighting against a foreign menace.
Baffling questions, astounding questions that not even the world's greatest scientific minds can answer.
Gentlemen, do you realize what we've found? A being from another world as different from us as one pole from the other. We can only communicate with it.
All right, let's take a look at the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. In my opinion, this is probably one of the better ones.
Stop! Will you tell these fools I'm not crazy? Make them listen to me before it's too late! Listen to me. Please listen. If you don't, if you won't, if you fail to understand, then the same incredible terror that's menacing me will strike at you!
This is from 1954, 53. Kevin McCarthy.
No, you've got to get out of here, please!
They come from another world, spawned in the light years of space, unleashed to take over the bodies and souls of the people of our planet.
That's Russia.
Bringing a new dimension in terror to the giant super scope screen.
It's whatever intelligence or instinct it is that can govern the form.
Again, create this paranoia and hysteria that you can't even trust people who are your neighbors because they could be aliens.
A cursed, dreadful, malevolent thing was happening to those he loved.
Think about this as witchcraft. It's like here's Betty or Ruth or Betty just possessed, and I have no idea why they're possessed. It must be demon possession or something
Sensational
else.
star discovery of the view from Poppy's head. And now an undreamed of horror makes her life and love a
And
vortex
someone
of
knows
fear.
the truth, and no one wants to listen to him because they think he's crazy, but he's not crazy.
Miles, where did they come from? I don't know.
Moscow.
Suddenly, while you were asleep,
He's one.
absorb your mind,
He's one too.
your memories. I don't want any part of it.
Yeah,
You're forgetting something, Miles.
it's already here.
You have no choice.
You have to
From
run.
city to city, an incredible hysterical panic spread. As the unimaginable
Again,
becomes
hysteria,
real,
panic.
the impossible becomes true.
Stop and listen! Stop and listen to me! Listen! Listen! Listen to me! You're not human!
All right, and let's watch the last one, World of Worlds, probably one of the most famous ones, 1953. I think this has been colorized. The main battle scene.
Thou anointest my head with oil. My cup
So even a religious person, America, the religious nature of America cannot stand up to, or is trying to defeat godless communism. So again, the idea of it's a war. It's a Cold War that's happening between the Warsaw Pact and NATO. All right, so something I learned from that John Hall lecture from Boston University is this idea of the Atomic Cafe, which was 1982. And let's just watch a little. He said that it encapsulates the idea of xenophobia, the fear of foreigners, the atomic paranoia that they lived, at the time, as we live today, under the threat of nuclear annihilation, that mutually assured destruction. And at one point, America was the only country that had nuclear weapons, and then Russia had them, and now we have France, England, and Israel, and China. So those countries. If you're interested in Israel's production of the nuclear weapon, it's a very fascinating story in itself, very secretive. But it's the G5, the 5 countries that officially have nuclear weapons. But at the time, and I remember my mom in the 1950s would tell me about having to duck under her desk. And really, that's a way you're going to survive. So let's end this lecture just listening to a little bit of this Atomic Cafe. If you're interested, you can go ahead and watch it. And so, the xenophobia, the being totally under fear that we're going to die at any minute in the nuclear, holocaust, and also, the anti-communism hysteria. So this is, let me just play a little bit of this.
Well, I guess there's nothing for us to worry about. We're the ones that have the bomb.
So everything in the 50s going great until, of course.
The United States is under nuclear attack.
In the background was the growing struggle between two great powers to shape the post-war world. A Cold War.
Enemy aircraft are...
I think we should use the atomic bomb in Korea. We could destroy them and contaminate them.
Now listen, kids. If they're dropping an atomic bomb, we'll wait about a minute after it's all over.
A minute.
We'll go upstairs and take a look around.
A new housing development near Denver, Colorado shows the nation's first model homes with built-in fallout shelters. It may be just what the harried housewife is looking for.
All right. Let's take a look at one more thing. One of my favorite movies of all time, Dr. Strangelove. Very dark comedy. I don't want to give away the ending. This is star-studded. This was the trailer, the official trailer.
Attack!
Russia.
Oh!
He's
Oh! Base.
10 females to each male.
Filter machine. Fluids.
So that guy, all right, he called a nuclear strike. This guy right here. Look at the camera angle. This is a fantastic movie. So worth watching. And he's worrying about his bodily fluids being infiltrated by the communists, largely because of erectile dysfunction, and so he wants to blame a scapegoat for his lack of essence is missing. So he calls a bomber strike on Russia, and they cannot call back the bombers. And Russia has their own weapon that if they're ever attacked, then missiles will start coming to America, and the world will end in nuclear holocaust. Let's just watch the scene in the war room. Again, this is 1964. So now satire, along with Monty Python, is being used.
One or two points I'd like to make, if I may.
George C. Scott.
Go ahead, General.
Peter Sellers, playing various roles.
Our hopes for recalling the 843rd bomb wing are quickly being reduced to a very low order of probability.
2, in less than 15 minutes from now, the Ruskies will be making radar contact with the planes. 3, when they do, they are going to go absolutely ape, and they're going to strike back with everything they got. 4, if, prior to this time, we have done nothing further to suppress their retaliatory capabilities, we will suffer virtual annihilation. Now,
all right, let me skip ahead to Dr. Strangelove himself, who's a former Nazi who helped. Okay, hold on 1 second. Right, here we go.
But with the proper breeding techniques and the ratio,
this guy, the former Nazi,
10 females to each male, I would guess
saying
that
how they could benefit from nuclear annihilation.
Gross national product within, say, 20 years.
This
but
guy
look
right
here,
here.
Doctor, wouldn't this nucleus of survivors be so grief-stricken and anguished that they'd, well, envy the dead and not want to go on living?
No, sir. Excuse me.
Peter Sellers is amazing in this movie.
Also, when they go down into the mine, everyone will still be alive. There will be no shocking memories, and the prevailing motion will be one of nostalgia for those left behind, combined with a spirit of bold curiosity for the adventure ahead.
Okay, it's in the 1960s, right? And he just gave the Hi Hitler, my fear he could walk, so I can walk. So he's a Nazi who's working for the United States, but he's still, a psycho, right? So we have psychos in the American government who have their hands on the nuclear codes, and we're all going to die. So I'm not going to give away the film. Watch it. It's dark comedy without a doubt. It's total satirical stuff, but it's scary as heck. And it's meant to be scary because we need leaders in this country who are not psychos, who are looking forward to having being studs and having one man can have like 10 women and crazy stuff, right? So hopefully you learned something here about film history and how Hollywood and the different film industry, whether it's in England with Monty Python or Stanley Kubrick or the horror films of the 1950s, helped capture this paranoia and xenophobia, and under the very real threat of nuclear annihilation. That was very new in 1950, right? We dropped the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945, ending the war in the Pacific. And we've lived with that for a long time, and we're getting kind of like used to it. We don't even think about it anymore. Now we worry about COVID. Now we worry about other things. But it's still a worry. It's still a major concern. And we need people who can, make wise decisions and hold people accountable. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.